noticed how some things become so normal that we stop questioning them altogether. Lately, I have been finding myself thinking about that a lot. So a few weeks ago, I was sitting at my dentist's clinic looking at an X-ray of my wisdom tooth, and I remember staring at it and having what was probably one of the most ridiculous thoughts I've had in a while. I was looking at this tooth that had caused discomfort, pain, and quite a bit of inconvenience, and I found myself wondering what exactly is wise about this wisdom tooth. It's a strange name when you think about it. The experience in itself isn't particularly wise. In many cases, it isn't even particularly helpful. Yet nobody really questions the name because we've all accepted it. It's a wisdom tooth. That's just what we call it. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how often we do this in life as well. There are certain words, ideas, systems, and institutions that become so familiar that we stop examining them. We inherit them from the generations before us. We grow up around them. Everybody accepts them, so we accept them too. Over time, they stop feeling like choices and start feeling like hard truths. Education is one of those things. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, I'm not questioning the importance of education. If anything, I am questioning whether we spend enough time thinking about what education really means. Because recently, I found myself in one of those parenting discussions that many parents eventually find themselves in from time to time, right? So a mother in a group was asking for school recommendations, and another mother responded with a list of schools. What caught my attention wasn't the schools she mentioned, it was the way she categorized them. She had divided them into two groups, regular schools and branded schools. I remember reading the message and pausing for a moment. Branded schools, I had genuinely never heard that phrase, before. Now I immediately understood what she meant. She wasn't talking about logos or advertisements. She was talking about schools that have a certain kind of reputation, a certain kind of prestige attached with it, or maybe some infrastructure, a certain image associated with them. And yet something about that phrase kind of stayed with me. The more I thought about it, the more curious I became to, understand from her as to what it is, right? When did we start talking about schools this way? I remember growing up and hearing conversations about branded bags, branded shoes, branded watches even. Those conversations made sense because we were talking about products and we were like teenagers, all right? And we were in a convent school. So girls had discussions like those. They were things companies spent years marketing and positioning. The entire purpose of a brand is to create an identity in our mind, to be able to make business out of it. But schools are not products. At least they shouldn't be. There are places where children spend a significant portion of their childhood. There are places where children slowly form beliefs about themselves, about learning, about success, failure, and about the world around them. And yet, if you listen to enough school admission conversations, you begin to notice a kind of a pattern. Parents talk about campuses, like the infrastructure. They talk about different facilities. Air conditioning is one of the major factors these days in deciding which school to send their kids to. In fact, air conditioned transportation as well. So they talk about sports, complexes, auditoriums, or technologies, and other such amenities. And please don't get me wrong, none of these things are not important, If I had the choice, I would love for my child to study in a beautiful environment with excellent resources, like why not? But I couldn't help wondering whether we've become so focused on schools that we've forgotten to talk about education, right? Because the two are not necessarily the same thing. In fact, the more I looked into it, the more I realized that many of us spend months researching schools, but very little time in understanding the educational philosophies that exist behind these schools. And that's where my curiosity took me next. I started reading about different boards, not because I was not trying to find the best one, but because I wanted to understand what made them different from one another. Honestly, what I discovered after researching on this a little bit literally surprised me, because before this I had thought of boards largely as different syllabi, say different textbooks, different examinations, but they are much more than that. Each board seems to carry its own philosophy about learning. CBSE appears to place a strong emphasis on structures, consistency, and foundational learning. There is a certain belief that before children can even explore broadly, they need strong academic fundamentals. ICSE, on the other hand, often seems to place greater emphasis on language, communication, and depth of understanding things. There is a noticeable focus on helping children express ideas, not just learn them. Then there is the IB curriculum, which fascinates me because it appears to begin from a very different place altogether. Instead of focusing primarily on answers, it places tremendous value on the questions itself. So it encourages inquiry, exploration, and independent thinking. Now, IGCSE similarly places the importance on conceptual understanding and application. The emphasis is often on understanding why something works rather than simply remembering that it works. The more I learned about these boards, the question stopped being which school is the best. Instead, it became what kind of learner is my child? What keeps her engaged? What makes her curious? What kind of environment helps her grow? Because as a parent, we know how our child's personality is. And I tell you, kids have a personality since the time they're born. So what kind of relationship with learning do I want her to develop is something which only I know as a parent. Because the truth is that a child can sit in the most beautiful class in the city and still lose their love for learning. And a child can study in a far less impressive building and remain endlessly curious. That doesn't mean infrastructure does not matter. It means infrastructure is not the whole story. And perhaps that's what the phrase branded school made me realize. Sometimes we become so focused on the packaging itself that we forget to examine what is actually inside that packaging. So we become so focused on reputation that we forget to investigate the core philosophy of education or learning in that. We become so focused on outcomes that we forget to think about the experience itself. And maybe that's why I keep coming back to the wisdom tooth story. Not because it has anything to do with education, but because it reminds me how we easily accept names, labels, and social narratives without pausing to ask whether we've truly understood them. Perhaps education deserves that little pause. Perhaps before asking which school is the best, we should spend a little more time asking what kind of education we really actually are seeking. Because I have a feeling that these two are very different questions. And if you're a parent navigating these decisions right now, I genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Do let me know if whatever I shared with you made sense. When you are choosing a school for your child, what mattered most to you? Please let me know in the comment section below. What is the board, say the philosophy, the environment? Thank you. See you again with another topic.